People are always asking me on a regular basis, who do I use for media, right? Like specifically, what are the tools? And I just gave a talk at EXPCon. They asked me to speak on media, which is kind of funny to me because 3 years ago, I was the guy who made fun of people who did media. I don't care if you're posting on media, but I was blind and now I see. And I recognize that it is a fantastic mechanism or tool to send yourself in the digital form to formulate relationships with people so they can decide if they know, like, and trust you. What I realized very quickly is you need a few things, right? You need strategy, you need tools, which is some equipment, and then you need a team. And the team is for editing, chopping up, and posting. The team that I use are these two strapping individuals from Social Imprint. So welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you guys here and excited to share some information and knowledge with the community.
Thank you for having us on, Aaron.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to talk.
Good. Same. One of the things that I think is very interesting is that everybody understands that media is important. Almost uniformly, everybody I speak to, regardless of the room size, whether there's 10 people in the room or thousands of people in the room, and yet they feel super overwhelmed. And I'm imagining, because you guys have lots of clients in the space, myself included, Jose uses you guys as well, and a bunch of other people in our organization that are growing their influence and followings. So if you had to kind of zoom down into a couple things that people need to understand, because it can be really overwhelming, what would be, I don't know, one or two, maybe three things tops that you would say for someone looking to get into the media game and increase their influence that is really important from your perspective?
So to start off, I would definitely say it's coming in with the mindset that it's going to be uncomfortable. It can be harder if you don't know yourself, right? Because everything's going to be like a first time. Mm-hmm. Whether you're not used to being on camera, whether you're not used to talking directly to the camera, those are things that are going to be uncomfortable, but that shouldn't be a reason to stop. That should be a reason to keep moving forward in order to, progress and see improvement, right? So that's just one. Coming in with the mindset that it is going to be uncomfortable. Just having that clear and set. It's not easy, and we don't try to pretend it is.
Yeah, in a breakout session in a mastermind that I was in, I heard something that is really what you're saying, is that awkwardness is the precursor of learning. So sometimes when we're awkward, we give it a frame, and the frame we give it is that, oh, this is bad. When in fact, it actually means you're in the process of learning something. So
exactly,
it's going to be awkward and uncomfortable, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's like the number one thing that I would say to start off.
And then even like you, Aaron, when you started, it wasn't super peaches and cream. Everything takes a little bit of time for you to start getting used to. But it's like we've even read in the book, the YouTube formula. Your first podcast isn't going to be good. Your first video isn't going to be good. But as you start progressing, you're going to get used to the camera. You're going to get used to how it is that you want to be perceived on camera. And then from there, you kind of start getting used to, all right, I'm ready. Let's do this. And I think you can speak, right, for everyone. That's how you started, kind of. Once I saw you, once you got used to it, you were like, all right, this is what I'm doing. And that's when your videos really started popping off because people started seeing you.
Yeah. I think, what I wrote down as you were speaking is if you're not embarrassed by your first attempt, you waited too long. So the first podcast I ever did with Jose, the power went out while we were doing it. And, we didn't have thumbnails. We didn't have good cameras. We didn't have good tools or good equipment. And I was 42 episodes deep or kind of long form YouTube videos with only 200 subs. And I was looking at our numbers, which is interesting. With your help on YouTube, the last 2 years, we had 600,000 views cumulatively in those 2 years. So let's say 300,000 views each. This year, the last 365 days, almost 2 million views. So almost all of the attention came around year 3. I think part of the reason why that happened is we upped the amount of long YouTube videos we've been posting per week, which, Pineda's team told us was important, and we listened. I know you were on those calls with us.
Yep.
And, we're starting to get outcomes. So I think if it's not worth doing for a decade, it's not worth doing for a day. This is so what you're saying, Letty, is when you come into this, recognize, hey, this is a long-term proposition, that building a brand takes a while, and actually getting good in terms of talent and producing content takes a little bit. And really, would you say that What it really is it takes a little bit to get comfortable with yourself.
Correct.
Yep.
Most of the time, content creators in general, the people that succeed the most, or that we see, how do I say, people gravitate towards them,
Mhm.
it's people who know themselves and are comfortable with themselves. People who are okay with kind of, well, who are okay with being themselves, right? And I know we say this all the time, authenticity, it's very, cliche, but in reality, the people that show up as them, that's what is the most like, that's what people come back for. They come back for the rawness of each individual, because that can't be pretty much like copied, right? Editing, all that fun stuff, hashtags, everything that is part of the process, it's an attribution, but the big piece of it is the individuality of each creator, right? What each individual has something to bring.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
And
And it's interesting. So I'm interested. I think that that's very true, Letty. And I'm curious from your perspective, Lewis, is that I became very aware in, at this event that I was recently at. I think humans have a tendency to get lost in like the minutia of things. So they'll get
Hmm.
lost in like, and shiny penny syndrome. So they'll get, people are like, oh, like ChatGPT and AI and all this stuff. And then about the editing and the hashtags and this and that. And I'm like, look, what I'm aware of is if it's not informed with a strategy, and if you're not authentically being yourself, because what I wrote down when you were speaking, Letty, is authenticity is the best form of advertising, and that the secrets of life are found in cliches. So even though that's a cliche, it doesn't mean it's any like
mm,
it doesn't mean it's less true. Is that if you're not comfortable with yourself and if you're not doing story branding, positioning yourself as a guide to help people to solve their problems, then it doesn't really matter. Would you agree with that, Lewis?
100%. And especially where you come in with the authenticity part. Many people, when they come into social media, they have inspiration of accounts that they want to be like and stuff like that, and they try to do like a copy paste of that. And I feel like that's kind of one of the biggest mistakes that you can make coming into social media, because you have to be yourself. People connect with who you are and who you really are. So Ryan Pineda, Alex Hermosi, Grant Cardone, all those people, the reason they've created the audience that they have is because they're themselves. They go out there. Look what Alex Hermosi wears when he's doing his videos. He doesn't try to dress up and look nice, and I think that's just not him. So that authenticity, that's what people are really connecting with.
Yeah. So what I wrote down as you were speaking is I remember being on a coaching call with a client who's actually a client of yours as well, and he said to me when he was first getting into media, like, "Hey, it took me like an hour to shoot one thing," and I said, "Oh, well, I know why that's happening." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because you're acting." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you're trying to curate an image. Like you're overly concerned about how you're being perceived instead of just being yourself. Because if you're yourself, it's pretty easy to be yourself. Like I'm an expert. Nobody can be Aaron like Aaron, and nobody can be Letty like Letty, and nobody can be Lewis like Lewis. And that's not difficult to do, right? But it's when I start to try to curate an image, and I think look at the wrong metrics. So, what are some of the metrics that you think people look at that are actually not what they should be paying attention to? Because I want to frame that question by saying I think most people just copy, and they're copying with the hope that they can get a few likes and more followers. But what ends up happening is you actually won't get a lot of attention doing that because you're not actually drawing people to you who are attracted to you because of who you are and what you stand for and your values and that sort of thing, and repelling people who aren't in alignment with who you are. You're just like blending in with everybody. So what would you say is metrics that get people distracted and cause them to actually create content that's not going to get a lot of people to pay attention to it?
But I would say really is it's just likes. People are here for the likes and follows, and really those are just numbers. Yes, of course, likes and follows are important, but I don't think it's the most important thing. And then when you're trying to be somebody else and not showing your authentic self, like you said, you're not really going to connect. So more importantly than the number of followers that you have, it's really like, how loyal are those followers, and how are those followers really looking at you? Instead of caring to have 100,000 followers, I think it's more important to have 10,000 followers who are really loyal to you as a person and understand who you are and kind of follow your values and what you stand for.
Yeah, I agree. I also think it's like I think it's likes and follows that become like they're looking at the wrong metrics. So instead of like getting all about people who have like 1 million followers, instead what you should do is look at people who have 10,000 but build a business that does $1 million a year from those 10,000 people. You know what I'm saying? Like, because the whole purpose is conversion. It's not just, like followers. Like, people say to me like, oh, you're a YouTuber. I'm like, no, I'm actually not. YouTube is the marketing division. YouTube is the marketing division for my companies. Like it allows me to send myself in the digital form so that way, agents or brokers can decide if they know, like, and trust me over time. And if I'm the type of guy that they want to invite into their life to help them to solve their problem, whatever their problem may be. And I think that is the thing that gets lost. And the reason why is because I'm focusing on the wrong metric. And then I start to copy everybody in hopes that I get likes and follows. Would you agree with that, Letty?
Yeah, so I was going to add to that. At the end of the day, if you don't have your own opinion, you don't have a brand. And like you were saying, with even YouTube, that's a way of marketing your knowledge, your expertise. But the reason people are, they come back for more, it's because you've established a brand, right? So at the end of the day, like metrics like following, liking, although it's great, we have to realize when we even view content, even if we like it, sometimes we don't necessarily put like, but what shows the audience, the algorithm, that we actually enjoyed it is the watch time, how long we stayed on that video. Did we send that to someone? It resonated so well that we sent it to someone else that we believe it would also, resonate. So those are the type of things that really indicate that our viewers were really, either connecting or resonating with the message that we're putting out.
Yeah, so I wrote
more than a like.
Yeah, and I wrote down two things as you were speaking. One is the most important metrics are not vanity metrics like likes and follows. They're actually shares, bookmarks, and watch time. Because if somebody shares something, that's an indication that they felt it was so good they felt that somebody else should see it. If somebody bookmarks something, that means they want to come back to it. And then if it's accumulated a large amount of watch time, that means that it was valuable enough that enough people wanted to see it. So it's fascinating, isn't it, that like people are focused on a metric that has nothing to do with what's really important. Now, I believe that what's underneath I'm curious to see what you guys think, but what I believe is that what's underneath most people looking at the wrong metric is precisely that. It's vanity. It's like wanting to get, validation or confirmation from others. And I said this in a room and I'm like, look, I'm going to make some friends, frenemies, and some frenemies, enemies by saying what I'm about to say. And they're like, all right. I'm like, say you're ready if you could take it. And they're like, I'm ready. I'm like, most of you guys use your media as a mechanism to gratify your own ego, not to position yourself as a guide to help people to solve any of their problems.
I agree 100%.
And do you have to, is part of the challenge, like with clients that you have, is helping them to understand that so they can shift to kind of story branding versus like posting pictures of them working out, which has nothing to do with selling real estate?
I would say yes. And it's not that it's not important to post your pictures working out. It's just that shouldn't be the focus of what you're doing on there, because that kind of shows, right, your personality, what you're into, things like that. And people connect with that also.
I think to add to that, it's understanding that although those attributes, those like lifestyle things, they're cool, but as an agent, if you're trying to use your social media to grow your business, you need to use it with intention. And I think that's where, how you're mentioning your pictures of, what you ate and pictures at the gym, that's not really bringing in client, because you're not putting out what you actually do. And with social media, you're supposed to be using it to pretty much not tell people, but show them what you do, show them behind the scenes of how hard you work in order to get that listing for your client, show them the behind the scenes of going to open houses if that is something that you do. At the end of the day, the mistake that, especially in our niche with real estate agents, is that they mistake that their life, there is no content. They have trouble finding the time to create content when in reality, what they do is content. So understanding that we're not here to have you make content, we're here to pretty much help you be the content, because that's what it is. And that's how people on the other side, an individual who needs more information about a home or is actually in the market for that, will look up to that individual as the expert to do that.
I wrote down a few things here. One is that there's a social graph and there's an interest graph. And I'm a little bit older than you guys. And I remember when Facebook first came out, I was in college. And that platform was on the social graph, meaning that they showed me what my friends were doing or interested in, right? Well, about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, however long ago, TikTok came around. And TikTok's algorithm is interest based. And the reason why that is superior long term is that what Aaron thought was cool or what he was interested in when he was 20 is different than what he's interested in at 40. So the graph, the actual algorithm changes with your interests, which means that it's superior because long term it can hold my attention for a lifetime, essentially. And when these other platforms like Meta and YouTube, when they realized this, and TikTok started to eat their lunch because their algorithm was superior, they pivoted very quickly. So they came out with Reels, they came out with YouTube Shorts, which is on the interest graph. And I think a vast majority of agents don't understand that distinction. So they're still doing media as though it's on the social graph, which is here's me with my kids, here's me eating breakfast, here's me working out, which nobody really cares about. You know what I'm saying? Like that, like to a small degree, to your point, maybe 5%, 2% of your content can be that way, but you're not really positioning yourself as a guide to help anybody to solve their problems. And what these algorithms are doing is saying, hey, we all have problems that we're trying to solve, right? And we're all looking for a guide to help us to solve those problems. So what I've been sharing with people, and I'm curious to see your guys' perspective, is if you're not positioning yourself as a guide to help somebody to solve their problems, then you're actually not doing media as a mechanism to grow your business at all.
I agree 100% because like you mentioned, to me, the most important part of this is positioning yourself as a guide, is showing the people like, hey, I know what I'm doing and I'm here to help you understand also. Because for example, the home buying process, that's not something that everybody understands. And the people that do understand it and don't want an agent, they kind of mess up sometimes. So having that agent to show you like, hey, this is how you should be guided in the process. That's to me is one of the most important things when you're doing social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that the best way to show somebody you can help them is by helping them. So I think that marketing used to be like, hey, if I can just get Letty to think about me when it's time for her to do something, then she'll do something with me. And perhaps that, you know, works to some degree. I think it still can work to some degree because frequency equals familiarity. What I'm aware of, though, is that the context has changed. So meaning I now have these tools at my disposal where everybody's at. People touch their phones, 150 times a day, according to Google. About let's say an hour to 2 hours of that's going to be on platforms. So what's going to increase the probability that people see me? Frequency, yes. But then also, what are they seeing? Are they seeing me acting silly? Are they seeing me working out? Are they seeing the
They
food?
can.
Right, but like what I'm aware of is
But it shouldn't be your main focal point,
it shouldn't be
especially
your
like
main
you mentioned.
focus. And what I would propose is are they seeing me as a guide to help them to solve their problems? Because what I think the definition of a brand is a feeling or feelings that the brand elicits. Yep. And what is the promise? So for us, what I'm clear on is the promise. If people are in proximity to me, they're going to do more transactions and they're going to get time freedom and location freedom. That's the promise. But the feelings that are associated, right? What feeling is it invoking? So if I see Lewis working out, like, okay, like, what's the promise? What, if I work with him, like, you're going to help me work out? Like, I don't, you see what I mean? So like, it's like this lack of understanding of what actually branding is. And I know that you guys give people ideas, and what I've shared with people is that they really serve as like just to jog your thinking. You don't have to like do it exactly the way it is, but you put a lot of time and energy into that to see like what type of media is trending within the real estate space. So Letty, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you guys do that, why it's important.
Yeah. Yes, of course. So at the end of the day, with social media, things are always changing, right? What's in today might be out tomorrow. And the biggest thing for us is at the end, like, how do I say this? At the end of the day, it's not just branding, but how you brand yourself, right? So I always try to attribute to clients that relevancy and relatability equals higher retention, if that makes sense. People are drawn to you if you're pointing out their pain points, if that makes sense. So at the end of the day, it's talking to those pain points, right? The people don't necessarily, especially nowadays with social media, don't like to be told I can teach you, I can sell you this, I can do that. People don't like to be sold on social media. So that's why how you do it is a big part of it. The creative aspect plays a big role. And that's why research, understanding hooks, understanding your CTAs is very crucial in order to get those individuals to stay on that video. Because your message can be great, but if you can't captivate an individual's attention for those 4 seconds, you already lost a potential client there, right? So it's the framing. At the end of the day, with social media, framing is important. And those things, they can be a bit, frustrating at times, because a lot of times clients don't want to do those things. People still want to say, hi, I'm Erin, I'm this, welcome. You lost.
Swap,
You
pass,
got
yeah.
swiped.
Yeah, I'm gone. You lost my attention. So
Yeah.
understanding that attention spans are very small, and that's why what you guys do specifically, whether it be thumbnails or giving people ideas with hooks and stuff, is very helpful. And I can attest to that. I mean, I went from 2,000 followers on Instagram to closing in on 60,000. We went from virtually no attention on YouTube to over 2 million views in a calendar year, 69,000 hours worth of watch time. And that part of that formula was having better thumbnails, better hooks, like all that stuff. You said something too, which was interesting, that we can delve a little into. You talked about understanding pain points, but in order to do that, I have to understand who the avatar is. Because I think that a lot of people think they're making media for everybody, but they're actually not.
No,
So can you talk a little bit about that, Louis?
that's a big mistake that people make, because you're not. And like I mentioned earlier, you don't need 100,000 followers. You just need the right 10,000 followers, right? So really diving into what those pain points are, understanding, like you said, who is your avatar? So who am I trying to sell to? And it's not just everybody. And I feel like one of the most important things to do when you're creating this content is sit down, write down on a notebook, like, all right, who is my avatar? What do they look like? What places do they frequent? And understanding, kind of niching down into, like we did, right? We started off, when we started our business, we started off with everybody. But then we noticed little by little, okay, real estate agents are the people who don't have the time. They don't understand the changes that are happening in social media, and they need this in their business in order for them to kind of achieve. Because I believe that if you don't start social media now, in 3 years, your business is going to be irrelevant, because the person who is starting social media is going to get on top of you.
Yeah, I think it's going to become increasingly more difficult. So I read a stat, and I shared this in a mastermind at EXPCon, that the Nielsen Group, who are the ones that do television ratings and stuff, they did a study about screen time on TVs. And what they found is fascinating to me, is that 10% of all time on TV screens, not iPads, not cell phones, on TV screens now is on YouTube. It's actually more than Netflix. Netflix is 7.8%. So that's wild. So, and if I was going to make a directional bet, it's like, well, what's the probability that that is going to go up? I think it'll continue to go up, and they're being intentional.
100.
They're being intentional and purposeful about it. So
100%. And sorry to interrupt you, right? But now we're not sure if after January 19th, we're going to have TikTok. If we don't have TikTok and TikTok falls off, I can bet you 100% YouTube is going to take that into their advantage. And that's going to grow from 10% to 12, 13, 15% over time.
Because the big thing that happened with TikTok, or the creators that created a brand on TikTok, it's that personable attribution of content. So they're definitely going to take those loyal followers, loyal, viewers onto YouTube, and that's just going to keep growing. And again, what a brand does is facilitate anything you do after that, right? Whether it's business, selling, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think that YouTube is, because people ask me all the time, like, what's the best platform? And I'm like, well, you're kind of, instead of platforms, you should be talking about short, medium, and long content. But what I can say from a platform perspective is YouTube is the only one that does long and short well. And they're built in they have built-in search with like Google and stuff. So to that point, if I was going to make a directional bet in terms of the percentage of time that'll be on TV screens on YouTube, I think everybody on this call would collectively agree over time that's going to go up. And they're being very purposeful about it. They started create own original content. They have agreements with like the NFL. They're showing football, like all that, right? They know what they're doing. Well, what they said in this article, which was super interesting, is that that algorithm then, because right now the algorithm is about like engagement, like we were talking about, right? Shares, comments, watch time. Well, on TVs, you can't really do that. So what the algorithm is going to start to focus on and boost is if you have a library of bingeable content. That makes sense. Because when you think about it, why does Netflix pay, I don't know, Seinfeld like $200 million? Because they have a large library of what? Bingeable content. And
Yep.
what I became aware of when I heard that, Lewis, because I know you're the YouTube guy, is like, dude, what we've been doing is building a library of bingeable content. So to your point, I believe that the production cost over time is going to go up significantly, right? So whatever it costs now to do what we're doing 3 times a day, on short form, and then 5 times a week on YouTube, I think 5 years from now will be double. And then so on and so forth. So that's why I have this huge sense of urgency, because I see it as like a land grab. And it kind of feels like we're a little late to the party. That's what it feels like to me, because people have been doing this for like 15 years. But I don't think we are. I think we're, I think it's just as good a time as any. And I do think as time progresses, it's just going to continue to keep getting bigger and bigger. But towards that point, knowing the avatar. So you were saying sitting down and saying like, hey, let's say I'm an agent and I do business in Wisconsin. It's like, all right, well, in this geographic area, what do buyers who are moving out of the area, what do they want to know about this place? What are the questions that they ask all the time? And then creating content that's searchable. So when they're in the process of thinking about moving there, they can watch content, they can interact with me. The best way to show somebody I can help them is by helping them. And there's a direct correlation between consumption. If you consume me for like 15 hours, you're probably going to work with me. And then Letty can decide if I'm somebody that she wants to invite into her life to help be a guide to help her to buy her new home in Wisconsin. I mean, that's what we're talking about, isn't it, Letty?
100%. I would say at the end of the day, those are all attributions to getting people. How do I say? You don't make the first sale on the first slide. You make it on the second, right? You need people to get to know what you have to offer, why. You know how they say, give everything for free. It's a give, and then get. It's never give and get, especially with social media. You're putting things out there as a way of pretty much serving. That's what social media is, really. If you have talent, if you have expertise in something, putting it out there will only bring something back, bring good to you.
So I think that generosity begets generosity. But it begets generosity asymmetrically. So meaning like if you do a kind gesture for somebody, usually what comes back is like way more than whatever you gave them. So
Yep.
Really, like if you view media, it's like a public service where it's like, hey, I have this particular specialized knowledge. I'm a guide. I help people to sell properties in this geographic area or buy properties. And here is my best information. And that will position you as a guide to help people to solve their problems. And, what will happen is when they do reach out to you, there's very little like selling that needs to happen. They've already decided they want to work with you because they decide that they know, like, and trust you.
I was going to add that, as you know, like realtors, real estate agents, like you guys been around for years on years, right? This is a huge, industry.
Come on, bro. You calling me old, bro? Like, what are you doing?
Not at all. I'm just saying, like, it's been around, right? So at the end of the day, they know what investing into marketing is, but they're not understanding that effective marketing is changing. And that's where social media comes in. You guys are investing into the magazines, investing into the billboards, the bus stops. At the end of the day.
That's funny. Me and Letty were talking about that the other day, where not you, but many agents invest on being on a bus stop, and you're really investing on people sitting on your face. Like, yeah, you can be seen, but that's really what you're investing on. And now you have social media that works for you 24/7. It's like there needs to be a shift. Like the other days I had a sales call and she was telling me how she spends an arm and a leg on being on a magazine, or that's how it was done before. It's like, okay, now you need to understand that, like Letty said, it's shifting. So that arm and a leg that you were spending on a magazine that people are no longer buying, you need to shift that over to social media. And I feel like that's something that still real estate agents are starting to understand, but they don't yet understand 100%.
Yeah, not fully. And I think it's a demographic thing. And I don't think it is shifting. I think it's shifted. Yep. And that's where all of the attention is, right? And, those methodologies in the physical world, it's not that they don't work, they're just less scalable. So in other words, like if you have a bus bench or a billboard, a certain amount of traffic, whatever, people might see it, as they drive by. And that's what the salesperson will sell you. Like, look, we have 80,000 cars that drive by this like every day or something, right? Well, what's interesting in the digital world is two things. Like, when you take that billboard down, or somebody, if you are on a billboard or a bus bench, when you take it down, like it no longer exists. Well, when I create a video, it exists in perpetuity forever. The other thing that's true is the amount of traffic, like on a billboard or a bus bench, I am limited geographically to the traffic. So it's only people driving by. But when I put it on platforms, I'm not limited geographically. It can go anywhere on the planet where there's an internet connection.
And
so
you run the risk of being tagged and drawn on. I mean, I don't see the liking in
or a mustache. We'll give you a mustache, buddy. So
exactly. How are you going to be an authority like that? I'm definitely going to pass by, look at that, and be like, you got my attention, but not probably for the right reason.
Yeah,
social media, you have more control there.
Yeah, and I think a comprehensive strategy, there may be a little bit of that, but like I think that clearly to me, you can make up for with leverage what you lack in ability. So I was telling somebody at the event, I'm like, yeah, dude, we've had 2 million views, let's say, in the last year. I'm like, what would I need to do that in the physical world? Like, I'd have to be like Taylor Swift or something. You know what I mean? Like, I'd have to have stadiums like 80,000 people, like every, you know what I mean? Or 69,000 hours worth of watch time. Like, I'm not physically able to get that in the physical world, right? That's 7 years of human life watching content. When I remember Pineda told me he had like 180,000 hours in a month. It was like something stupid, like 25 years of like people's life watching in 1 month. And all of those people are potential customers, right? So to your point, the shift has already happened. It's just that now people are recognizing it's a thing. I think we would all agree on this call. Everybody collectively realizes like, hey, this is important. Yep. But it's a lack of what we were talking about, like strategy, a lack of tools, and a lack of a team that's serving as a barrier to entry. So maybe, Louis, you could talk a little bit about like your guys' team at Social Imprint. How is it structured and how is it set up to serve the agent community that, oftentimes is busy doing deals and.
So pretty much like our main goal at Social Imprint is really to like take all the time consuming part of social media off of your hands. So when you do sign up with Social Imprint, you pretty much get a dedicated team of a strategist and a video editor. That strategist though is really a graphic designer, a social media manager, and a social media strategist. So you really have to look at it in the big picture of everything that you are getting when you sign up with us, right? And like you mentioned earlier, our team is really dedicated to going in, seeing trends, doing competitive analysis, understanding what's working, what isn't, any changes that are happening in social media, and then being able to deliver that to you, right? And then bi-weekly or weekly, however it is that you kind of go on with your strategist, you'll go ahead and you'll get like these research ideas. Those research ideas are, again, what's working, trends and stuff, but they're not meant for you to copy paste like we were talking in the beginning of the podcast. It's really meant for you to understand like, okay, these are the keywords that people are searching. These are the things that are working. Now, how do I take this and make it my own? So really, when you are with us, it's really taking that time consuming part, which is searching, trending, what is going on, posting, finding hashtags, creating captions, editing, chopping, all of that stuff. We take care of that. And really what you have to do as an agent is just film the content. Be yourself, film the content, be authentic. Like Letty said at the beginning, yes, it's difficult at the beginning because you have to get used to the camera, but once you get used to it and you start putting it in, you'll notice that you can literally time block 90 minutes each week and just get your content out there. And that's all you would really have to do as an agent.
Yeah, and I can attest to that all I have to do is just give you guys raw footage. That's it. And then you guys take it from there. Because I think people imagine they see kind of the frequency and the cadence with which we're producing content. And they literally imagine like I spend all my time doing it. And I'm like, I maybe spend like, I don't know, like 15 hours a month. Like it's not, because I'm really just like, to your point, I'm just documenting a lot of what we're doing. And then once you kind of understand story branding, once you understand like hook, value, CTA, like call to action, then you can just kind of do it on the fly, so to speak. So I guess to you, Letty, like what are some of your guys' biggest challenges in trying to help agents grow their kind of platforms? Because I'm aware you've successfully done it with me, Jose, a handful of others. Like, what do you see? So somebody says like, yo, we want to work with you guys. It's awesome. I'm overwhelmed. I need somebody to give me ideas. I love the fact that I got an editor. They can chop up and post. Like, what's the main barrier to you guys actually doing your job?
So definitely it would be the lack of providing. That definitely is. I always tell people we literally can do so much. We're creatives. I believe we can make something out of nothing. But at the end of the day, when it comes to establishing your expertise, your knowledge, you need to be able to provide that to us in video. We will make the best out of it. We'll make sure people are able to consume it at scale. But if you're not, putting in that aspect of it, which is providing content, we kind of, we have our hands tied behind our back. Our biggest thing is the lack of consistency in the collaboration. And I would say effort. I think sometimes people forget, yes, content, we can, edit, we can chop, we can do the most with it. But at the end of the day, your energy is perceivable through, video, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to stick if you're reading off a prompt and you're not letting it flow. Like, these are things that are so small, but I have the biggest negative effect in clients being able to see success in their content. It's that they're not applying the feedback we consistently provide. And I think that's the biggest thing. Not understand, like, we will always provide feedback. We're very transparent because we know what it takes to grow. But if you are not applying, we kind of hit a few walls there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm taking notes as we're speaking. So one is provision. It's just providing, the data so that way you guys can do what you do from a creative perspective. And I can attest to that. Like, I'll send you stuff just from my phone and it'll come back looking awesome in terms of all the editing and creative. I also wrote down, as you were speaking, just kind of having a long enough vision, like elongating time horizons. Because I'm imagining what'll happen, Lewis, is like somebody will do this for like 2-3 months and be like, well, I haven't gotten a lead yet, so I got to stop this. And I've just learned that building a brand is like a forever commitment. Like, if you're going to be in business, like, this is something that is just part of business, and there's a reason why it's a line item in real businesses, which is marketing, and that's how I perceive this to be. I mean, do you see that oftentimes people just give up too soon?
Yeah, way too many times I see people give up too soon. It's like you said at the beginning, it's not worth doing 10 years. It's not worth doing 10 days, right? So that, to me, is one of the most important things, because we do have a lot of people who come in, they don't see things for 3 months, and then they're like, you know what, I haven't seen anything, I'm gone. But Jessica, for example, she's one of my biggest case studies in, like, give it time. I remember Jessica, she was like, where are the results? I don't see them. I'm not getting a lead. And little by little, she saw, like, oh wow, 6 months in, she got her first viral video, 9 months in, a second. And then after that, she got 300,000 views, got 4,000 followers. And from that, she's seen a lot of clients come into her coaching, right? And like, what that shows is really just being consistent and committing to it. Like, if you're getting into social media and you're understanding the importance of it, it's not going to be done in 3 months. For example, the first month is really strategizing, understanding who you are as a client and understanding who your audience is, so we can start taking that out. So if you think in 3 months, cool, I'm going to have my first viral video, there's going to be people coming in, that's not really how it works.
Yeah, it's an unrealistic expectation, right? And to your point, like, I have no idea what videos are going to go viral. And you think you're like, oh, this is a banger, and like you get like 300 people to watch it, and then ones you're like, really, dude, like, that got 1 million views? I guess so. Like, I don't know. It didn't. Like, we had one that got up to I think it's 1.5 million or something. I was talking about AI. I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess so. Right?
People love controversy, I think, and again, relevancy. AI is big and new, so people, relevancy and then controversial, your opinion. Those type of things definitely stick.
And I think that I'm glad you brought that up, because that goes to the authenticity piece. Is that what I have become increasingly aware of is making definitive statements about what you believe to be true is polarizing. So half the population will hate your guts, and the other half will be like, yeah, that makes sense. And I remind people regularly, like, if you can get half the population to hate your guts, you can become president of the United States. And, I find interesting, like, the videos that we have had almost uniformly go like viral to very different degrees, whether it's 10,000 views, 20,000, 100,000 plus, is when I say I personally believe that open houses are a waste of time. Everybody loses their mind. Half the population's like, well, I did a few deals and I don't agree with you. And the other half's like, yeah, man, that's totally true. I just sit there and do nothing. And they're not the most productive use of time. So how much of this game is being open to that type of feedback? Because I think a lot of people have been conditioned because of school and perhaps their family of origin that the goal and objective is to make sure everything's copacetic, nobody's upset, nobody's bothered, when in fact, in this area, when I start to see it starts to run and I see all the comments, I'm like, yeah, buddy, like people are getting mad, like it's fantastic, right? So how much of that do you think plays into the success of, media?
I would say it plays a good part in understanding that, like we were saying before, you're not here to make content for everyone. You're here to make, establish your brand, really grow your personal brand in order to grow your business. And that takes being willing to talk from the chest, say what you really feel, because you will get people that will agree with you. And those are the people that will follow. Those are the people that will gain some type of loyalty to you. But if you put nothing, if you're just, you're not giving anything out there, no one is grabbing onto anything. It's better to be liked for who you really are instead of being liked for who you're not.
Yeah, I think that's great. I you said, say it with your chest, player. And what I'm aware of is if everyone likes you, you're not being yourself.
100%.
And I think
yours is great, like me. Just kidding.
So,
definitely not.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like where I think people mistakenly imagine that the purpose of being in a public platform is to get everybody to like them. And that's not actually what's true. Because if you're actually standing for something and making definitive statements about anything, people won't like you. I tell people regularly, like, one of the most influential people on the planet was Jesus. And a lot of people didn't like what he said. So, you know what I'm saying? Like that's not actually the intention. And I think that's also like a sacred cow of thinking that people have to overcome. I tell people regularly the story of, we've had two people where this happened. One guy, he stood up. I was at a presentation with Jose. We're in California. There's like 200 people in the room. And he had a question for us. So we give him the mic. I have no idea what he's going to say. And he's like, hey, I just want to let you know, Aaron, the first time I met you was online and I thought you were annoying. You bothered me, right? And I'm like, okay. And what was interesting is two things. I noticed two things simultaneously. The first, my thinking was like, okay, like I don't really care about that. The second was that the audience of all the people, you heard this like nervous rumble of laughter. And what I instantly became aware of is like, oh, all these people are terrified of getting that type of feedback. That's why they don't do anything. And if you can withstand that type of feedback, it seems like a superpower, right? But then he proceeded to share, which I thought was super interesting. It's like, because he was self-aware enough to notice this, but he's like, yeah, as I thought about it more, I realized I wasn't actually annoyed with you. I was annoyed with myself because I knew what you were saying was true and I wasn't doing it. And then he ended up partnering with us at EXP. So he went from like, I don't like you, you're bothering me, to partnering. We had another guy said the same thing where I was like, I forgot what it was. It was like a reel. And I was like, about one of these big anchors. I can see his face, but I'm blanking on his name at the moment. Tucker Carlson from, Fox News. And where he got fired. And I'm like, well, if you cost somebody a bunch of money, like you're probably going to get fired. And someone in the comments was like, somebody told me to follow you and now this, sad. And that individual, what's wild is that got his attention. He got into our ecosystem. He bought products from me and he partnered with me. So that's like, both of those are perfect examples of, the goal is not to get everybody to like you. That's not the goal and objective. Now, I do think, and I'm curious to see what you guys think, because some people are like attention skanks, and they'll do anything to get attention, dress silly, show their body, like whatever. And that is a form of attention. I personally believe it's kind of like a race to the bottom. So if you are going to say something you believe, like actually believe it.
Yep. Don't just say something to say something. Say it, like Letty said, say it with your chest. Say what you really believe, because that's what people are going to connect with.
Yeah. And I think that if you, instead of telling people what you do, like share with them what you believe and why you believe it, that's way more powerful. Because, I mean, let's be honest. What is the truth? The truth is that anybody with a real estate license can help them to buy and sell. Yes?
Yep.
That's the truth. The truth is every title company does the same thing, bro. That's the truth. But what I learned, I was just at this event and he said something which was fascinating. He was like, you know, a piece of chicken can end up on the dollar menu at Chick-fil-A. But that same piece of chicken with a story ends up on a tasting menu for $200. The only difference is the story. Yes? And what media is story, it's narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the capacity, and it's also framing, like, but story, what the branding does is it does the framing for me without me showing up. It creates the narrative without me showing up, right? And then once I do, it makes that conversation much more smooth and efficient. So this has been a fantastic conversation. I think people are going to get tremendous amounts of value from it. So for those people that are watching today and are like, yo, this makes total sense to me, I need to have a conversation with Social Imprint. Letty, where can they find you guys?
You can definitely find us at Social Imprint Agency on Instagram, and then on our website is Social Imprint. And I just definitely want to remind everyone, don't be too afraid to fail that you're not even willing to try. That's the biggest thing I want to leave for the viewers, is letting agents know that the fear of failure is most of the time what keeps them from getting to that next level. So.
Yeah, and I love that. And then what comes up for me is that, people always use the excuse of like, I'm a perfectionist. And I'm like, well, here's what I can tell you about perfectionism is that it's the fear of failure in disguise. You're actually just afraid to fail. And that's contrary to how we actually learn. That awkwardness is a precursor for learning, and that frustration means you're in the process of learning something. So this is definitely a worthy pursuit. You guys are awesome. I very much so enjoy doing business with you. And we'll drop in the link. Yeah, we'll drop down in the link here, a link to their website so you can check them out. And thanks a bunch. Look forward to reconnecting soon.
Thank you for having us.
Guys, use these platforms. Don't use them to consume, or just sit back and watch other people do it.
You're on camera right now.
They only see me on screen.